You know, whenever we talk about Iran, the conversation almost always revolves around what the US or its allies should do. What are our options? But honestly, that's only half the story. Today, we're going to flip the script and ask a much more important question. What are Iran's real options for ending a conflict?
And that question right there, that's the whole ballgame. Seriously, the answer to this determines if a conflict fizzles out in a few weeks or if it grinds on into a brutal, years-long war. This isn't just politics, it's a massive strategic puzzle.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll tackle why the idea of surrender is a total myth. Then we'll get into the clever diplomatic tricks to save face. After that, we'll look at how you can end a war by just changing the subject. We'll touch on using time as a weapon, and finally, what a realistic, kind of messy ending actually looks like.
Okay, first things first. To really get what Iran might do next, you have to understand what is completely, 100% off the table. And that's a simple public surrender. It's just not going to happen.
This quote really hits the nail on the head, and the key word here is structurally. This isn't about pride or being stubborn. It goes way deeper. The entire identity of the Islamic Republic is fundamentally built on this one core idea, resistance.
So what is this resistance narrative? Well, think of it as the bedrock, the very foundation the whole system is built on. It's the story they tell themselves and their people that justifies their role. So, if the regime is suddenly seen giving in to the West, that entire foundation cracks. And that's not just a political problem, it's an existential crisis. And that brings us to the crucial point. When you hear Western leaders say Iran just needs to come to the negotiating table, what Tehran hears is, please commit political suicide. From their perspective, it's a complete non-starter. So, what are the actual alternatives?
So, if a full-on surrender is out, what's in? Well, let's get into the first set of real options. This is all about diplomatic maneuvering, the fine art of backing down without looking like you're backing down.
You've basically got two classic moves in this playbook. First, you bring in a middleman, a neutral country like Oman or Qatar. That way, any concessions you make aren't to your enemy, they're just gestures of goodwill to a friend. See how that works? The other move is to just do something. You release a prisoner, you pull back some forces, and you call it your own sovereign decision. Then you sit back and see if the other side does something similar, creating a way out without ever signing a deal.
And this slide is just perfect. It shows you exactly how this face-saving magic works in the real world. You have two totally different stories being told at the same time. It lets both governments go back to their people and claim victory. The US says, our pressure is working. Iran says, we're listening to our allies. It's brilliant. Really. Everybody wins, nobody loses face, and the temperature comes down.
Okay, now for the really creative stuff. Let's say you're in a conflict you can't win. What do? Well, if you can't win the game, you change the game.
There are two big ways to do this. First, you change the subject. It's like a magic trick. Hey, look over here. Instead of talking about the current conflict, you propose something new and easier, like a big regional security deal. The other way is you change the leader. A new face can come in and say, hey, that was the old guy's war. I'm all about peace now, making a clean break. Think about what Gorbachev did with the Cold War.
And look, this isn't some wild theory. We've seen this work before. Think about huge peace deals like Camp David or the Dayton Accords. Did they solve every single little problem? No way. What they did was brilliantly reframe the whole conflict. They basically took the impossible issues, put them in a box on a high shelf, and focused on what they could solve so everyone could just move on.
And that brings us to the last, and maybe the most common strategy of all. This is when you decide not to outfight your opponent, but to simply outlast them. This is the art of weaponizing time itself.
This chart really gets to the core of it. It's the classic story of the tortoise and the hare, right? Western nations are the hare. They're driven by short election cycles, public opinion, economic pain. They need results, and they need them fast. But Iran's strategic culture is the tortoise. They're comfortable with long-term pressure. For them, just surviving, just enduring is a form of victory. They know that if they can just hold on, Western political will and fragile coalitions will eventually start to crumble.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, you can pretty much forget about a clean ending. There will be no treaties signed on the deck of a battleship. The reality is going to be a whole lot messier.
Let's be honest, the end won't be a single event. It's going to be a muddled combination of everything we've talked about. A bit of third-party deal-making, some unilateral moves, maybe an attempt to change the subject, all stretched out over a long, long time, until everyone is just too tired to keep going. A clean, decisive surrender by Iran?
It's just not on the table. And that right there is the kicker. It flips the whole thing around. The real question isn't just what will Iran do? It's can the United States and its allies accept an ending that's, well, ambiguous? Can they live with a resolution where they don't get that clear public win and Iran gets to save face? So it all boils down to this one final, incredibly tough choice. Do you insist on a clean, decisive victory, knowing it will probably mean a much longer, bloodier, and more expensive war? Or do you accept a messy, ambiguous compromise to get to peace faster? There is no easy answer here. But how Washington and its partners decide to answer that question will likely shape the world for years to come.